It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, EQ Nostalgia here, and it is October 31st, 2025. It's 11:30 in the morning, just about. This video is going to be going out a couple days later. I found it interesting, though. I found these old photos of me from Halloween back in the 80s. And it really was better back then. You know, there's people that'll tell you, no, that's just your nostalgia. No, it was better. Halloween hit different. The world was in a different place. And you didn't have, you know, you had problems, but you didn't have all this division and all this BS going on in the world. You know, it's funny because I get people who will come into my videos and they'll say things like, you don't know what you're talking about, and you're just stirring up drama and blah, blah, blah. And then there's people that genuinely want to understand what wokeness is. And those are the people that you can actually reach, because they haven't had their brains scrambled yet. There are some people, it doesn't matter if you show them all the facts. And I'm going to have a video that talks about this in a minute, okay? You can show them all the facts and it doesn't matter. They have been conditioned so badly that you're not going to stir them out of it. You can show them all the receipts from all the different times in history where this stuff has happened before. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They made up their minds. So you'll have people who are like, oh, you know, you're far behind mentally, acting as if this is some sort of progressive thing when it's not. A lot of these people don't understand that the corporations are on your side. You're not the rebels that you think you are. You're not like the people from back in the day who were like stirring up revolution. Actually, you kind of are, and they were kind of useful idiots too. So I guess it does kind of match. But anyways, they're not progressive. They're regressive, because all of this kind of shit it's a sign of a late stage civilization. From all of these different empires, we've seen this. You can study this. There are feminists out there, old school feminists, that will show you how this happened throughout history, how things trended a certain way over time. But yeah, it's irritating when you got people trying to tell you, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just a hater, and you're part of the problem. Blah blah blah. Well, no, I'm trying to wake you up to the fact that this is ideological subversion. It's not just wokeness. Okay. A lot of the people on YouTube they'll stay at the surface level. They pull in a ton of views, and it's a big cash cow for them. That's not what I'm doing over here. And I've actually had people get mad at me because I won't, quote unquote, name them. Just name them, bro. It's like, yeah, you know, I mean, I could do that and then get deplatformed and never speak again on YouTube. Thanks for Fed posting. All right. People are starting to notice, and you don't have to, quote unquote, name them. You have to be a stepping stone for people to understand. It's not like you can just go straight over to like Blackpilled, Devin Stack from Blackpilled, and people are going to listen to you. There are certain stages of waking people up. You can't just jump into the extreme version of what's happening without losing basically everybody. You have to wake people up kind of gently, all right? And one of the ways that I like to do that is to point them to this video. I point people to these videos all the time, and they don't click on them. Because like I said, they've already made up their minds. Most people have already made up their minds. But for people who haven't, and they're truly trying to understand what's going on, those are the people that I'm trying to reach and stop them from running off the cliff with this shit. I want you to listen very carefully what he says, especially about people who have already made up their minds. And this is from the 80s. I think it was like 1983. Like a year after I was born. This is old, okay? Because I'm old. And it's just, you know, it's prophetic. It's very prophetic, because here we are today, and everything he said has happened. So pay attention And at the end of this video, I'm going to be linking you to videos. I suggest you follow up with them. I understand it takes time to address this kind of stuff and to figure out what's going on, but the world didn't turn into the mess that it is today overnight. You have to study and you have to stay vigilant, or the enemy is going to get an advantage over you. So please, pay attention.
Yuri Alexandrovich Bezmenov. Mr. Bezmenov was born in 1939 in a suburb of Moscow. He was the son of a high-ranking Soviet Army officer. He was educated in the elite schools inside the Soviet Union and became an expert in Indian culture and Indian languages. He had an outstanding career with Novosti, which was and still is, I should say, the press arm or the press agency of the Soviet Union. It turns out that this is also a front for the KGB. He escaped to the West in 1970 after becoming totally disgusted with the Soviet system, and he did this at great risk to his life. He certainly is one of the world's outstanding experts on the subject of Soviet propaganda and disinformation and active measures. Well, you spoke several times before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand. When the Soviets use the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate 1 generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years, actually it's overfulfilled, because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans. Thanks.
Do you hear that? Most of it is done by Americans to Americans. Now, he's talking about the 60s and how extremely degenerate it was, and it just got worse and worse from that point on, okay? And he's trying to tell you that it's already complete. In the 80s, it was already completed because we had the sex, drugs, and rock and roll nonsense, and everybody just kind of went off the rails. And their traditional family values were already thoroughly subverted. You had feminism, so-called civil rights, which was just a way to divide the country up further and cause racial tensions. It looks like it's a good thing, but it's not. Just like feminism, it looks like it's there for women, but really it's not, because it's just a second taxable income, and your kids, they get to be raised by the state and the television. And if you understand who produces television and movies traditionally, who owns all of that stuff, well, basically they're having their brains scrambled from an early age. And that's what he's talking about. But it's very important to understand that most of this is done to us, by us, because they get into people's heads and then it just spreads like a cancer.
To lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom When a military boot crashes his balls, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation, what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world that the process will go that fast. The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth, to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., with benevolent dictators like Walter Mondale, who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfillable or not. Your leftists in United States, all these professors and all these beautiful civil rights defenders, they are instrumental in the process of the subversion only to destabilize the nation. When their job is completed, they are not needed anymore. They know too much. Some of them, when they get disillusioned, when they see that Marxist-Leninists come to power, obviously they get offended. They think that they will come to power. That will never happen, of course. They will be lined up against the wall and shot. But they may turn into the most bitter enemies of Marxist-Leninists when they come to power. And that's what happened in Nicaragua. You remember most of these former Marxist-Leninists were either put to prison or one of them split, and now he's working against Sandinistas. It happened in Grenada when Maurice Bishop was already a Marxist. He was executed by a new Marxist who was more Marxist than this Marxist. Same happened in Afghanistan when first there was Taraki, he was killed by Amin, then Amin was killed by Babrak Karmal with the help of KGB. Same happened in Bangladesh when Mujibur Rahman, very pro-Soviet leftist, was assassinated by his own Marxist-Leninist military comrades. It's the same pattern everywhere. The time bomb is ticking. With every second, the disaster is coming closer and closer. Unlike myself, you will have nowhere to defect to.
And that's the truth. You have nowhere else to go because it's been spread everywhere. And if you take a look, I want you guys to think about the past 5 years and how absolutely insane they've been. Everything from Charlie Kirk to the whole ICE thing and the migrants, everything to do with like SNAP and the whole food stamps thing, the economy, the fact that they're pushing for an online identity for everybody, the fact that we're moving rapidly towards a digital currency. All this stuff is being centralized into one tyrannical globalist power. And if you don't see that, you're not paying attention. If you don't understand that all the things that are going on in the world right now are leading to an escalation, I mean, a lot of people have woken up to the fact that something is not right. If you're still living like it's, I don't know, 2015 or something like that, I don't know what you're doing, but I'm not the one who needs to get out and see the world and, be mentally brought up to speed with everything going on. Everything that he said was going to happen has happened. So we're pretty late stage at this point. I'm honestly shocked we haven't had like a civil war in this country again. And it's not just America. If you look over at Europe, they're having issues as well. They're having a lot of issues, a lot of them. So all around the world, you've got the same problems everywhere. People dealing with migrant issues, economic issues, and yeah, it's not looking very good. It's not. And, you know, just to get a little biblical on people, if you were to read the book of Revelation, you would hear about this thing called the mark of the beast, where nobody gets to buy or sell unless they take that mark. So a digital currency and ID would be really good for that. I think that would be a necessary step for something like that, don't you? It talks about how one man takes power and he promises peace and he brings all these solutions and it looks really good for a while, and then all of a sudden it goes sideways. So I would recommend people take a look at something called the Noahide laws. That's something I hopefully I can say here on YouTube without being deplatformed. Look into Noahide laws, because I know a lot of people pay attention to Sharia law, right? And that is an issue, right? That's something that, especially in Europe, it's a growing concern, the Muslim Sharia law. But take a look at the Noahide laws and take a look at some of the signings that our presidents have done with the characters that he's had around him in the past. Okay? Take a look at things like anti-Semitism laws and how they're trying to get rid of freedom of speech. Speaking about Trump, he's somebody who has been signing off on all of that stuff. I know there's a lot of people that listen to my content, they think that I'm like right wing. My morals align more with the right wing than with the left, that's for sure. But there's some things where you would call me a leftist. There's some things where, because I'm not caught up in either of these hemispheres, I try to be, rational about it and not get dragged to one side. There are things that I don't agree with on the right or the left. Mostly I don't agree with the left. But yeah, Trump is a pawn. And if that makes you angry, I don't know what to say to you. He's basically owned by AIPAC. And yeah, I mean, if him pulling out Netanyahu's chair and sending all this money to them as we're getting ready to have, I don't know how many people starve in the country. And I know there's a lot of people out there who are like, get a job if you want, food stamps. I don't need to be supporting people. Okay, well, it's still destabilizing the economy. And a lot of people that get food stamps, they do work. They're just not able to make ends meet because the price of living has absolutely skyrocketed. And the price of what we make, it's not going, it's stagnated. So something's got to give here, right? So there's going to be a whole lot of problems. And then there's going to be somebody who comes along, like I said, who's going to play Mr. Fix-It, and he's going to have a lot of people under his spell. That's my prediction for the future, and I've been trying to warn people about this for half a decade. I constantly get called names. I told people not to get the jab way back, and I had people starting forum threads about how I've lost my mind because I don't like the jab, and I'm telling people not to get it. Man, that didn't age very well, especially if you take a look at the statistics of how that's gone. So yeah, I've been over here trying to warn people for a long time, and I'm absolutely positive that I've been sanitized on the algorithm. I can't seem to break past a certain point anymore. My past videos, they could reach 20, 30, 40, 50, even up to upwards of 450,000 views. I haven't hit that ever since I started talking about this stuff over half a decade ago. So I've been sanitized. I've been placed in a box. That's obvious. And that's another one of the reasons why people don't talk about this stuff over here. Okay? Because it affects their bottom line. Well, bottom line for me is I don't want people being blindsided by this satanic globalist bullshit. Wake up. Study the things I've said. Watch these next videos I'm linking for you at the end of this video, because it's very important for your future and for your family that you understand what's going on. If you like this video, hit like, subscribe, click the notification bell. God bless, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next video.
Nostalgia. It's delicate.